My name is Rose Bard, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm here to introduce, for those who don't know them, Eileen Willett and Norm Barrett. Norm, just to give you a little bit of a background about our gentleman here. Norm was born in Fort Kent, graduated from Fort Kent Community High School in 1972, and attended UMFK for 2 years, then moved to UMO, where he graduated in 1977. He married Teresa Karen, who's here somewhere. And they had 4 children and now 6 grandchildren. Norm started his career at Dead River as a manager trainee and held various management positions. He eventually oversaw the company's operations in southern Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts, and in the last few years became the company's director of acquisitions. Norm's retired in 2020 after 42 and a half years. I never made it past 10 years in any job I had. Eileen is a native of Quebec and returned to Fort Kent with his wife Louise Devois and their 5 kids to raise their family. He's a former town manager and a local and state economic development coordinator. Eileen has successfully managed economic development projects, and his bilingual skills were invaluable in developing his relations with Canada and elsewhere. Before retiring in 2019, Eileen's small company was responsible for tourism, marketing, and development for northern Maine. Norm and Eileen have been friends for a long time and share common interests, one of which is an annual fishing trip to Baxter State Park along with other friends. And this is where, sitting around a campfire, drinking beer, and of course not overdoing it, they started talking about a bike trip from Kittery to Fort Kent via Route 1. And that's how this landed on their bucket list. And here they pulled it off, so they're going to talk to us.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Wow.
Mostly live, but we'll take it.
I learned some things about myself I didn't even remember.
It's scary. Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alain.
I'm Norm.
And we're here to tell you a story. I'm not going to boast. We're just going to tell you a story about an experience that we've had together, and one that we're quite proud of. And as many things go, these begin as nothing more than just an idea. And what we'll do this evening is begin with that idea, that concept, and how it came to fruition, and how we were able to get the job done, as they say. But first, tonight, if you have interest, and I made the little cards available and the pencils, I think we're out on Helen.
We have a couple.
We got a couple of. If you have cards and pencils, that would be nice. And the reason is because you will want to write your questions down if you wish. If you have anything to ask, whatever. We'd be happy to answer them at the tail end of our presentation. Number 2, and probably the most, I think, the most important thing would be for you to think about something that you have never done but always wanted to. Something you just couldn't do. Children, family, you name it, your job. All the things that would prevent anyone from really accomplishing a personal goal of yours, but that now, assuming that you're all retired, that you're in a position where you might be able to get that thing done. And to me, there's nothing more that sparks a person's later years is the desire to accomplish something. Always keep that in sight. And what I'm going to ask you to do as we talk this evening is think about that. Just kind of think about that. And on the back side of that card, write yourself a little note saying, I will accomplish whatever. You don't have to share it. You don't have to, this is your own commitment to yourself. And we didn't do this last time when we presented in West Bath, and there was a component that I thought would be important because, yes, we have a story to tell, but yours maybe have not yet been told. So think about that as we go through our evening's presentation. Norm and I have agreed it's only going to take 3.5 hours. So, you'll be fine. And if the urge, comes up where you really want to ask something, go, please don't hesitate. So, with that, we will begin with our little slideshow here. And we thought the opening slide should be something like this. H.G. Wells, of all people, wrote, "Every time I see an adult on a bicycle, I no longer despair for the future of the human race." And I think that's poignant. I think it's a very important thing to capture in your mind, in your heart. And hey, maybe the bicycle might be part of that dream, that objective, that goal that we have. So,
Can you dim the front lights right under the boat?
sure. I don't know.
Oh, that, yeah, the lights.
On him, but I don't know how they can sound. So Norm, why don't you begin?
Yeah, so these are two adults stuck in a previous age, getting their bicycles ready at the beginning of the trip down in Kittery, and with a successful completion of the trip at the First Mile Monument. You'll notice that we're basically wearing the same clothes. There were 12 days in between. But we did have laundry facilities. We did manage to clean up every now and then and do a little laundry. So we had, Al, I think the next slide shows us. Why? Okay, well, we'll hold that thought. So Alan and Louise drove down from Fort Kent. They stayed with us the first night. I live in Scarborough. So the next morning was a pretty easy, commute to our starting point. We probably left the house at around 8 o'clock, and I think at 9 o'clock we were getting on our bikes and getting ready to take the trip.
And as all of us probably go through this process, we not only have our goal, we have our objective, we have the thing that we're after to capture, but we also need to remind ourselves, well, why is this important for us? And so Norm and I kind of got our thoughts together, and we put these few bullet points together, and are probably going to comment on them as we go along. So Norm.
Yeah, so like was mentioned in the bio, I retired in January of 2020. It was January 3rd, actually. And on January 5th, I was on my way to Florida to kick off my retirement. Well, after being in Florida for about 2 months, something called COVID-19 hit the scene. And so we scrambled back to Maine and basically cut our vacation short. And I remember being back in Maine, and it was kind of cold and rainy, and I was thinking, I got to do something. I was getting kind of antsy, and I thought, I got to do something a little out of the ordinary, something big, if you will. And so this idea started percolating in my mind, and became an event, became an actuality.
And we'll provide the details about how that whole chronology of events took place from the idea to the actual fruition of our objective. So bear with us. So the post-retirement thing, as I talked about earlier, is important for all of us because we're no longer punching clocks, hopefully. But we have some years left in us, and we want to make those years count. And so this was the big deal for us at the time. Will there be bigger ones? We've already talked about it.
The need for adventure is always something that we should all keep in mind and hope for. You get into a rut sometimes, do the same old, and doing something a little out of the ordinary, something a little adventurous, something a little out of your comfort zone is fun, and it challenges you personally. And in this case, it was both a physical and a mental challenge, because neither one of us had spent, that much time on a bicycle. And we were confident we could do it, but we had never done it, so we took the plunge.
We did. And I'm glad we did. There were other adventures on my bucket list which have yet to be accomplished, but this to me gave me the confidence to do other things. And the more important piece to this was to do it with someone you really care about and you trust and you have fun with. And to me, couldn't be better than Norm. We'll get into the details about who was going to join us and who backed out, because they had really good excuses. Okay. So, personal challenge. Yes, personal challenge is important. Do something that you feel will get your juices going, where you say, I don't know, I really don't know if I can do this. And I must admit, I had those thoughts. I never, like Norm said, I never really had accomplished anything like this before. And because of COVID, I wasn't able to do another trip that I wanted to do. I love to hike. I wanted to hike the Camino de Santiago in Spain. COVID put a stop to that. And so this became my personal challenge. And probably most importantly is our friendship. We've known each other for, in Norm's opinion, way too long, but it's something that really we value, and the group that makes up this friendship is more than just Norm and I. We'll get to that. Anything to add?
No, we're good.
Okay. No, it isn't the Oak Ridge Boys. To our upper left is Jean-Yves Albert, better known to us as Jet. We won't get into reasons why he got the name. Below, sitting down, is Bob Netto. Many of you will know Bob. Dick Netto's son, or Kent also. And to his left, this guy right here, Bob Daigle. Leo Day, St. John Plantation. Leo Day. And
Lucille's brother.
yeah. Lucille. Take it.
Sandy's husband.
These fellows, we make up the group called the Baxter Boys, and the pineapple is there for another reason. But anyway, every year, for a number of years now, we get together, and as I pointed out in the news article, some of us have known one another since kindergarten. In fact, there are people in this group tonight who have known me since kindergarten, and perhaps even before that. So that group right here makes up a very important piece of my life. And it just so happens that this guy here walked in. By the way, his name is actually not Bob, it's the wrong way, but that's another. How you doing, Bobby?
I'm here. Everybody's wearing masks. Where to get a mask? I have to sign in.
So Bob Daigle is with us this evening. Thank you, Bob. You were supposed to be somewhere else, too.
Well, I'm here.
Okay, good. You're going to show up again.
Gail's here. Everybody here.
So Norm, why don't you get us going on the chronology of events that took
Yeah,
place?
so, the idea was formed, in spring. We had some phone calls, basically Zoom calls with the Baxter Boys. And I put the idea out there to the group. I said, would anybody be interested in doing something a little different, a little out of the ordinary? And I'm thinking of, biking, the entire length of Route 1 in Maine. And Alan, piped in immediately that he'd love to do something like that. And a couple of the other guys said, that sounds so interesting. And I think maybe we could join you, but I got these commitments, and I've got, family coming, and I don't know if I could do that long of a bike trip. And it was suggested that a couple of them were going to be our support vehicle, and they were going to you know, set up camp for us in the evening and prepare a meal and then do the same thing the following day. And we sort of talked about that and said, you know, we do 50 or 60 miles a day. It's going to take us all day to do that. It's going to take you guys like 1 hour to do that. You're either going to be 2 sheets to the wind by the time we get there, or you're going to be bored to death, you're going to pack it up and go home.
Exactly.
So anyway, after a few more conversations, it became clear that Alan raised his hand first, and it was going to be a trip of 2. And by the time we met in Baxter in 2020, which would have been probably in June, we had ironed that out, that Alan and I were going to be doing the trip. And, you know, we talk about training and so on, gearing up. Al, I'll let you, sure, let's take that.
So that period between, from July to August, really was that where things got serious. I mean, neither one of us wanted to tackle this and be in the shape that we were in at the time. And so we'll get into bicycles and equipment in the next slide. But we did a lot of this biking stuff. And really, we didn't go very far, but we used the trails that are here. Some days were amounted to maybe 20 miles, other days 30 miles. A few of them were up into the 40s, and in one case I did 50 miles, and I was so proud of myself. But then Norman reminded me he did quite a bit more than that in one day, so I was totally deflated, totally. So it was kind of this friendly competition. How many miles did you do? How many, you know, that kind of thing. So we also, because we hadn't had any experience with this kind of stuff, we really sought the help and advice and counsel of people who've done this before. And some of you do your shopping at Perry's, and you may know Ronnie Pelletier. Ronnie is an avid biker, an avid runner, and he pulled me aside one day while I was shopping for pineapples. And he pulled me aside, he says, Ale, he says, I have to warn you of something. And he was dead serious. I mean, we were just right up close to, you know, face to faces. Be careful like this. I said, why? What's wrong? He says, you're going to get the bug. You're going to get that one trip is going to seal the deal. You're going to want to do more trips. So tell Louise, you know, tell your friends, you're going to want to do more trips. And you know what? He was absolutely right. It's almost as though it becomes, hey, I can do another one. I can do this, I can do that. And there's one person in particular in this room who I think I know he knows what I'm talking about. It gets inside him, and he was right. So we've got other trips that we're talking about right now. So finally, September 6th to the 14th.
Yeah, I got to add too that, you know, I live in Scarborough, so Alan was training up here, and I was training down there. And a couple times I was up here because we have a seasonal home up here in Soldier Pond, and so I was up here for a couple of weeks, and I brought my bicycle. And I got to tell you, you've got some great hills around here for training. And I'm going to name a few just because the next time you're driving up one of those hills, you can think about, wow, I wonder what it's like pedaling up one of these. So the hill by Corrivel's landscape garden shop in Wallaguss, that's a good one. Peanut Hill, that's a killer. Sherwood Hill, that one kicked my butt. And then the hill in Dago, I call Cemetery Hill, which, you know, goes up by Don's house and down to Little Black Lake and so on. Those are great training rides if anybody's ever interested. Yeah.
And that was part of the training because we knew that, well, to our expectation, the route we chose is quite hilly. So, onto this notion of preparation and training. You're going to recognize a couple of things here. These are all local photos that we took. And they're examples of what we went through as we were training. There, as Norman really aptly said at the beginning of our presentation, there's a physical and then there's an emotional side to this challenge that we have. And so, everyone knows Legs Labbing? One day, as Norm pointed out, we went up to St. Francis, and on our way there, Legs was outside reading, guess what? sports magazine, right? So we pull over, and how you doing, boys, and how are things going, and, you know, great this, great that. So Ruth, his daughter, shows up a little later, well, after we're gone. I don't know if you knew this. But, yeah, he says, you won't believe who I stopped by today. And he says, well, who? He says, Anne and Norm. They were on their bikes. They were heading to St. Pontville. She called me. She said, did you really go to St. Pontville? I said, no. I said, oh, goodness. She was sure we'd gone through the woods of Maine. But no, it was just up to Joe's Country Store and back. Another poignant reminder of people who are important in our lives, particularly people in our class, was this guy right here. Some of you may remember Peter Hart. Peter passed away back in, I think it was, 2003. Peter was the life of all lives. He was such a gregarious, fun-loving fellow. And on one of our trips, we stopped and we asked Pete to join us on our trip a month later. And sure enough, he joined us, and it was a big part of our trip. Well, another photo there, another photo there. This, by the way, is just poor Louise. She must have seen 12 different iterations of this kind of stuff on the floor in the bedroom. What do I bring? How much of this? Too many of that. And so that's just one of many. But that became sort of one of my preoccupations, and more so than she wanted. And other stuff was the bikes. Norm, maybe you want to talk about the bikes and how we decided he's got the Lance Armstrong bike, which goes twice as fast as mine. But, you know, how we...
You know, well, I mean, I didn't have a bike to do a 600-mile trip, and I guess Alan didn't either, so Alan did the proper thing. He went to a bike dealer and bought a nice brand new bike, and I did the Norm thing. I went on Craigslist and found a bike that I thought would suit me, and away we went. So Alan just keeps reminding me, he says, never let me sell the bike for what I told Louise I paid for it. So yeah, let's go to the next one.
That's it. Google Earth, many of you are familiar with Google Earth. We used an app called All Trails. And All Trails is an easy application to use. Neither one of us is really computer savvy. But we generated daily accounts of the lengths of each of our trip north. And what I did is I saved the files, and I was able to plot them onto a Google Earth map. And they're all the segments are color-coded. So you'll see longer segments, you'll see shorter segments, you'll see diversions down below here. And that's why, and why don't we talk about the mileage, Norm? You had a really interesting point the last time we talked.
So if you were going to go from Kittery to Fort Kent, up 95 and then to Holton and then to Fort Kent, it's around 300 miles. If you were going to take Route 1 all the way down east and then north, Route 1 in Maine is about 525 miles. And we ended up doing about 600 plus miles because of some of the little detours that we took. So, I mean, this wasn't about getting from point A to point B in the quickest, fashion. It was about, just being true to following Route 1 and enjoying some sights along the way.
Some of you may remember Carl Sagan. Carl was a very famous astronomist, and he appeared on National Public Television for a series about astronomy, all that comes with it. And interestingly enough, I came upon this little phrase, and I used to love watching Carl. If constellations had been named in the 20th century, I suppose we would see bicyclists. And that I thought was pretty cute. So, over to you, Carl. We decided on this approach. When we started putting together the slides, we had a different arrangement. And Norm said, Alan, rather than do it the way you're presenting, why don't we look at it in a chronological type manner, so I thought, okay, all right. So, and that's basically what we did. So we took those segments apart and we made a daily wrap-up of what took place. So, Norm, hit us with day one.
Yeah, so day one, like I mentioned, Al and Louise came down, stayed with us at our house. We're right at the Route 1 bypass bridge in Kittery. Louise has given Alan's bike the final inspection, make sure it's a green light to go. And this was Labor Day, and people thought we were nuts to be taking Route 1 on Labor Day. But you got to remember, we were northbound, and there's a mass exodus on Labor Day, but people are headed back toward Massachusetts and headed south. So the traffic was bearable, and we actually took 1A from Kittery up through York in a Gunquit to, get out of even more traffic. So the night before we left, we had a nice gathering with friends. Steph Gagne and Jackie Losier was there, and of course Steph's wife Diane, and a lot of the people that we talked about earlier. That was sort of a nice send-off for us. And then, day one, we hit the road around 9 o'clock, and Louise and Teresa dropped us off, and we didn't know what they were doing for the rest of the day, but apparently they went to the Kittery Trading Post, which is a popular spot, and they went out to lunch, and they dilly-dallied along the way. So we got home at around 4 o'clock, much to their surprise, because they had only been home for about an hour. And, we had just pedaled 52 miles. So we knew after that day, Al and I, that, we're going to be able to do this, Al. It was a real confidence booster for us to do, 52 miles and be home by 4. And I slept in my own bed that night. Al slept in the guest room. Day one was in the books.
We spoke of this app that we employ. If I can get the mouse, I'll just depict for you what All Trails did for us on a daily basis. Hopefully this will work. Oh, okay.
I guess not.
That'll cut our presentation down by 15 minutes.
Around 3 hours.
Yeah. So, Norm, I'll let you take this one because there's some special people here that maybe Norm would be best able to do too.
The interesting thing about being on a trip like this is the people that you meet along the way and some of the friendships that you make. In this particular case, when Al and I were planning this out, it's okay, day 3 we'll stay here, day 4 probably here. Day 2, we knew we were going to be in the Bath Brunswick area. We didn't have a place to stay, so I asked my daughter Emily, who's in that photo with Al and I, if she knew anybody in the Bath Brunswick area, because she was working in Bath at the time. She says, well, I'll put the word out. Well, the next day she calls me up and she says, well, the lady I worked with at the library, which is this gal right here, has a little cabin in West Bath that you're welcome to use. So we thought this was just absolutely perfect. So Bob and Roberta Jordan had this quaint little cabin on an island actually in West Bath. So we made it there, across that nice little shaky little bridge, and just had a great accommodation. They were such good hosts. They made salads for us. They brought water and soft drinks. My daughter brought pizza and a couple of cold beers, and we just had a great evening. Being in that.
Has anyone ever been to St. Anne of Beaupré?
Yeah.
Well, this photo reminded me of St. Anne of Beaupré. Because if there's anything I'm going to remember about this trip is, at least in the beginning stages, were the constant flat tires that Norm was getting on his bike. And at the time, we were there at their cabin, and all I could find was a 2x6 to kind of twop it up. And then I had to watch this guy try to repair a tire that probably never should have been on that bike. But, you know, some people hang their crutches there. Well, you know, we could probably hang that 2x6.
Bring the 2x6.
Bring the 2x6.
Yeah, that's one of the casualties of being a Craigslist shopper. You get what you pay for sometimes. But I got to tell you something about. We'll dwell on this slide or on day 2 a little bit because a couple of rather interesting things happened along the way. So we stopped in Bath, not in Bath, in Freeport for lunch. It's a little place opposite Ella Beans, some outside tables with umbrellas and so on. We said, hey, let's go in there for lunch. So while we're maneuvering our bikes on the sidewalk and you know, getting ready to go in, there's a couple of older ladies that are sitting there, you know, just getting ready to go in themselves. And so we park our bikes and we're chit-chatting a little bit. They're asking us, you know, where, obviously we're not just taking a day ride. We're all packed up with saddlebags and everything. And one of the ladies says, do you take your father out often? I burst out laughing, and I immediately said, Alan, you gotta hear this, right? And I'm not gonna let you forget it, Alan. So that was a hoot. We got a good kick out of that. Later on that day, as we progressed up Route 1, we're in Brunswick at the 7-Eleven. We stopped there to either get water or drink water or something. There's this guy standing out there, just a random guy, never seen him before. Starts talking to me. He says, "You in the FBI?" And so I played along with it. I says, "Yeah." I said, "At one time." He says, "Well, I was CIA. We served together." I said, "Yeah, I think I remember that." You know. But before this brief conversation was over, I was FBI, he was CIA, we had served somewhere, someplace, sometime. No more details than that, but he was happy as heck that he made it. I guess I was happy that he was heading down the road.
See, while all this was going on, I went back in the store because I wanted no part. But you handled it.
This is random people that you meet. That's great.
Day 3, et fini. Probably best, Norm, that you just, well, no, now that you've destroyed my ego. It's important that we talk a little bit about the challenge, the physical challenge. And that, of all of the photos that we were able to take, that particular one, for me at least, was a clear example of how important it is to be hydrated, fully hydrated constantly as you're doing something like this. We had just climbed, probably, Norman, I wish I could show you on the All Trails link what hill we climbed. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean a lot, quite a bit of elevation, and you know, like my father just mentioned, it was pretty tough on him. It was pretty tough on him, and we weren't sure we were going to make it to Moody's Diner, but I kept pushing Alan. I said, look, it'll be worth it when we get there. Moody's, many of you have been to Moody's or have heard of it. It's a legendary, place. It's a well-known restaurant. And I just wanted Al to experience that. So we finally did make it to Moody's, but Alan was wiped out. And but I'll tell you, after some, I don't know what it was, some home cooked food and a nice big piece of pie and a lot of water, he was ready to go a few extra miles. So it was good to recharge our batteries at Moody's.
Very important. You think you're fine, you think you're properly hydrated and you've eaten enough, but as the day wears on, you suddenly realize that you get a little nauseous, you get a little kind of worn out, and it's the bonk, as cyclists will call it, it's bonk, B-O-N-K, and that bonk will hit you like a freight train, and there's nothing that will stop it until you actually come to a complete stop and drink lots of water. I must have had 6 glasses of water before anything. And then I started regaining my composure. But then again, I was twice Norman's age.
Yeah,
so-
they're about to just drag a hose to the table and say, "Oh, we're good now."
Don, do you think we can try it? No, it won't work.
Yeah.
Never mind. Day four. We needed to stop into a bike shop for repair, much needed repair. And in my particular case, probably my bike needed more work than Norm's did. But nevertheless, we stopped in at this bike store in Belfast, and it's called what is it called again? CG Bikes.
CG Bikes.
And those two guys right there who happen to be the nicest fellows you'd ever want to meet. They were over their head with bikes everywhere, waiting to be repaired. And when Norm and I showed up, they locked the door. No, they didn't lock the door. They just moved everything. Once they heard what we were doing, once they learned what our goal was, everything went by the wayside. They immediately took care of our needs. And this guy here, Chris and Mike, but before leaving, I went over to Chris and I said, I'm going to make you a promise. What's that? I said, I promise to come back here someday soon. Because I so enjoyed the way you handled our needs that if you're going to do that for us, then maybe you'll do it for us again. He says, Alan, I promise you I will. So this spring, before Louise and I left for our vacation, she and I went down to Belfast and brought my bike down. And sure enough, I put everything aside, took my bike and did what needed to be done. So there are good people in the world. That's my message. That's my story. There are good people in there. Come on.
Here's Alan.
Thank you.
For brand new bike, Alan, you shouldn't have needed that.
Go into this, is it? Talk to us about this.
Yeah, so, in Belfast, almost right behind the bike shop is this legendary food truck. And this lady has had this food truck in Belfast for, I don't know, 15 years or so.
Yep.
And
Dickies.
yeah, it reminded you a lot of Dickies.
Yeah.
But anyway, they served up some great hot dogs and, chatted us up and just made us feel welcome and fed us and got us on our way.
Good people.
This is the day also, it wasn't always sunshine. This was a day that we got about 3 inches of rain this day. And it was coming down in buckets. And Alan and I, fortunately it was warm, so it was a warm rain. So Alan and I said, we can stop somewhere and, under a picnic table or a gazebo or something, or we could just soldier on. And we knew that night we were staying with friends and we'd have a dry place. We'd have a place to sleep and a place to dry off. So we just kept going, and our destination was Stockton Springs, and we did get there. But I think we had to empty our shoes when we got there because we were truly soaked.
There's a French phrase called "il bouillait comme des clous," like nails. When it hits, it just kind of. That's what we pedaled through for 30 odd, more than that, a long time.
Yeah.
But we did make it, and it was well worth it. There we go. And this was our destination in Stockton Springs. Norm, have at it, my friend.
Yeah, these are some, she's a local girl, Jane Bouchard. She's Alvin Bouchard's daughter. And her husband, Craig, they were in the process of moving, so their house was basically all tore up, with moving. And yet, they were able to accommodate us. We did laundry and dried our clothes, showered up, cleaned up and everything. And it was just a great pit stop. And, even though you're wet and you're tired, if you know that you've got a place at the end of the day where you can dry off and, get a good meal, you can find the strength to go on. Yeah. And Alan, you were helping this guy
poor
trying to
guy.
find something.
He was so, it was just so disconcerting to watch this poor guy. I mean, he had lost a contact lens. So, I mean, I couldn't believe it. He dove right in. And for as long as he was there really wasn't much movement to him. So we figured,
But he
well,
tried to come up.
Yeah.
I kept him down.
Yeah. And so we
Sure.
figured, well, we might as well pose with the guy, you know. And that's how this all came about.
So there were some lighter moments along the way. And this is the Narrows Bridge across the Penobscot River, heading into Bucksport. So another iconic site in Maine.
86.
Go ahead, Al.
Not like any other day, but some of the coastal scenery that we were pedaling along was absolutely breathtaking. And that really kept us going with that trip. And I took that picture because, you know, it's really impressive how Winter Harbor presents itself. These what they call wayfinders. It's just a nice thing for a small town to do, and I thought that was pretty impressive. Again, I was thinking as an economic development guy. I said, yeah, this is nice. This is pretty. Here, we were biking, knowing that at some point we would bump into one of the Baxter boys. We knew kind of in our minds that was going to happen. We just didn't know when or where. And Norm gets a call. And finish the story, if you will.
Yeah, I got a call. It's
Wrong way.
It's the wrong way Daigle here. He said, "Hey, where are you guys?" I said, "Well, we're biking. We're out in Castine, not Castine, but down Route 1." I says, "Almost at Scooty Point." And he was going to Castine with a load of students for some sort of a tournament. And so he says, "Well," he says, "I got a few minutes while these activities are going on." He says, "I'd like to hook up with you guys." So we told him where the turnoff was to go to Scooty Point. And we stopped and waited for him there. And sure enough, he showed up. You see the bus in the background. And just long enough to say hello and how you guys doing. And here's a couple bottles of water, and took a photo. And he had to get back to work. He had to get back to pick up the students. So it was nice to have him join us, along the road, even if it was just for a few minutes. Always good to see a familiar, smiling face.
Not far from here was an event that will remain embedded in my mind. And it was our experience at one of the lookout points at Scooty, where we're both sitting on rocks near the most majestic view one could ever have. And it was time to have a snack. I mean, we were both pretty tired. It had been a long day by then. And so Norm and I are sitting on the rocks and reaching into our bags and grabbing our snacks. And with me was one of those energy bars. And so I thought, my goodness, I didn't know I had any left. Reach into the bag, pull out the energy bar, start tearing it apart, take one bite. One bite. Now, I'm sitting there trying to savor the moment. In comes, bounces off Norm's shoulder or something, and off mine, and then whoop, off goes the seagull. Seagull grabbed my snack, and there's nothing I could do about it. I mean, he just took off.
I felt the brush along my face.
Yeah.
It was so close.
And what happened? The national park people were there.
Yeah, well, you thought, rightly so, that that seagull's not going to pick up the wrapper, right? Going to hit the bar. So Alan walks a couple hundred yards down the beach onto the rocks where the seagull had devoured his energy bar, picks up the wrapper, and he's walking back toward where the bikes are parked, and there's a couple of park rangers there because it's part of Acadia National Park. And he's telling, and so Alan's telling him, "Hey, you wouldn't believe what just happened. They stole my energy bar." And they looked at him like some tourist, from places far away from here. And he says, Well, you know, there is a sign there that you're not supposed to feed the birds.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
So, you have to have humble pie after that, Alan. That's all you could have.
Gotta have it.
A little humble pie.
Lubec. This was another one of those highlights, at least for me. I think Norm as well, for a couple of reasons. And Norm will begin by talking to us a little bit about the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. Is anybody familiar here with the Bicycle Coalition of Maine? Every year, this organization will sponsor a bike tour, and it's a pretty demanding tour. And it just so happened, well, go tell us.
Yeah, on our way to Lubec, of course, we had to go through Machias.
Yep.
And when we approached Machias, there were a lot more bicycles on the road than we had encountered up till that point. We thought something was going on. So as we come into Machias, there's a big, like, tent set up, and there's a band playing, and there's some food trucks, you know, they're selling hot dogs and burgers and stuff. And so we kind of pull into this area of activity, and it was the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. They have an annual ride. And, you know, of course, again, they could tell that we weren't just out for a day ride, so told them where we started from, where we're going.
Yeah.
And apparently, a couple of years prior to that, the annual ride was held here in Fort Kent. It was held in the valley.
Anybody remember that?
Yeah.
And the lady that was talking to us was one of the people that had been in charge of that. And she immediately just started gushing about the Fort Kent area and the people up here, and that it was one of the best annual rides they had ever had. And of course, Alan, us both being from here, we just puffed our chests out a little bit. We were just as proud as could be, you know, to hear somebody, you know, talking about our hometown like that. It was pretty special to hear how much that they had enjoyed that annual ride.
There's nothing like local brew. Neither one of us knew that Lubec had their own brew site. And so when we came upon the Lubec Brewing Company, look carefully at the photo. You'll see that I'm pretty well braced up, right? See that? And my left arm is wrapping Norm pretty tightly. Had I not been there, I don't think Norm would have been able to stand much longer. That was my, since I don't drink that much, that was my contribution to the Lubec experience, but there is a piece to that that also is important. Apparently, this is the local hangout for millennials, basically. Vets, Vietnam people, you name it, older folks like us. And they had this big circle of chairs. You could tell that they were well worn, and they'd been there a few days before that. And they're chatting away about this thing and that thing and about ghosts and whatever. So we're a bit shy, as you can tell. We're a bit shy, but we joined in. And what a wonderful experience. He's at one end of the circle, I'm at the other, and we're just going back and forth, having the most wonderful time. That too was very special. And someday we'll hope to go back if they make a non-alcoholic beer. So.
Yeah, it was very random, but it was very welcoming also. So there isn't a whole lot noteworthy about this particular day, and of course we didn't know as we were doing this that we were going to be, you know, presenting about our trip. So we didn't always stop to take as many pictures as maybe we could have and so on. But the one memorable thing about our stay in Calais is that Alan and I would usually, because we weren't exactly sure how far we were going to make it every day and whether we were going to have breakdowns mentally or physically or mechanically, we usually only arranged our lodging like one day ahead. Well, when we called Calais, the whole town was booked up because it was the mill shutdown, which they do a couple times a year, where contractors come in from all over the state or all over New England to work on the paper making equipment and you know, keep the mill going. So tradespeople just take up all the rooms, but Alan, with his wit and charm, was able to find us a room for one night, which was great. And these are some of the sights along the way.
Our dinner was absolutely wonderful. We met the waitress, barmaid, manager lady, who, again, coincidentally, happened to be married to a fellow from Frenchville. So the more you get to talk to people, the
Yeah.
closer this world that we're a part of begins to get.
Yeah.
She was so happy to learn. And so what she does, she kind of doubted us a little bit, I think. So she grabbed her phone and she says, I'm going to call my husband and I'm going to tell him that you're here. She already knew she had written our names down. So she calls her husband. You won't believe there are two guys here from Fort Kent. And I could sort of overhear, what are the names?
Yeah.
What are the names? And so she gave him their names. And his comment was, get them out of there right now.
Yeah. But it's a small world because, and Alan's a great guy to travel with because I swear, every town we went to, he had a connection with either a town manager, a municipal person, a tourism person, or an old girlfriend, I don't know, but he had a lot of contacts.
Norm, this one's yours, my friend.
Well, the thing to say about this is, even though I'm looking all smiley and all red-faced over there, this was probably our toughest day on the trail. Because we left Calais, Maine, which is at sea level, and made it to Weston, Maine, in Aroostook County, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 miles from Holton. And this was a long, hard day. It was uphill, a lot of uphill, and it just so happened we had a headwind instead of a tailwind. And these are friends of friends. This is Bob and Bonnie Grant. And they're friends of Craig and Jane Bouchard and Craig Crawford. So we asked them, I said, look, do you know anybody in such and such a place? Because, you know, we haven't got a place to stay out there. There's no hotels in Weston. And so, well, yeah, I've got these friends, Bonnie and, Bob and Bonnie, let me give them a call. So sure enough, they made the connection for us. They were very gracious hosts. We had our own little, sweet little cabin. They fed us a great meal. We did our laundry. We showered. And I met a good friend there, Chummy. Chummy and I just hit it off and got along great. On the way there to Weston, you can see East Grand Lake. And there's a place called the $1 Million View, where you can see forever. That's Mount Katahdin way in the background. And it was really quite a sight. I had never been from Calais to Holton on Route 1. And it was a long ride. It was a lot of woods. But we went through, the Indian townships, and it was great to get to Bob and Bonnie's place.
The only point I'd like to share has to do with that photo. I even get a little emotional thinking about it. But, these trips do take a lot out of you. And much of what drives you to complete this trip is the end. What's waiting for me? What is so important in my life? Well, they all just happen to be in Aroostook County. And so it all kind of changes, And then the second reaction I had was, Norman was good at this because there were days where I was having a rough time. But he says, we're going to make it. We're going to make it. Well, my we're going to make it moment was that sign right there. That's the one that said, okay, we're going to make it. We're going to do this.
Yeah. Here's the county.
It was really special. And again, Bob and Bonnie, they've even offered to put us up at their condominium at Sunday River. What was Sunday River? But that's how nice they are. You know, they're just wonderful people. This was the trip that Norm was describing to us, and that I've never seen thunderstorms like this ever. But we did make our way to Holton. We had a room at the Ivy's Motor Lodge. You know, and it just so happens, small world, that the hotel manager happens to be the former president of the St. John Valley World Acadian History Organization of some sort. And so she's working there as a manager. So it was all hugs and so she gave us a discount on the room, you know. But
Talk about where we stayed on the way there. When it was raining so hard, we had to pull into that little store.
I don't remember. Tell me.
So we had left Weston going to Holton, and under cloudy skies, and the skies just opened up. I mean, it was thunder and lightning, and Alan and I just got off the road and huddled under some trees for a while because it was coming down so hard. And once it lightened up a little bit, so we took off, and then before you know it, the skies opened up again, and it was really coming down. And so we said, well, Alan, we'll stop like at the next public place we find, you know, like a little store or gas station or something. Well, the next place we came to, it was a big flag that said open, and so we said, hey, let's pull in there. Well, it was a pot store. And I'll tell you, there was a couple of homegrown dudes in there. They had the beards, they really looked the part. You know, like, hey man, you know. So, but they were cool, you know, they let us in there. We hung around there for about a half hour, just, you know,
Sniffing?
and breathing as hard as we could.
What are you talking about?
Inhaling as hard as we could. But it was interesting, you know, to meet these two guys, and they were very welcoming. So, yeah, hang around as long as you want. Man, we got nothing else to do. It was kind of cool. It was kind of cool. And then we ended up at Ivy's, and Al met his former colleague.
Yeah. I forgot about that story. And I didn't take part. Okay. This, again, that sign that we saw was my gateway. This was kind of an affirmation of that gateway. And I'd like to invite Norm to tell us the story about this especially, and then we'll go on from there to here.
Yeah, you're all familiar with the solar system, right? Yeah. Very vintage Aroostook County. So we left Holton, and it was 120 miles on Route 1 from Holton to Fort Kent. So Alan and I were kind of debating whether we should try to do this in 2 days or do this in 3 days. And, you know, this was like day 11 or so, and so we decided that, look, let's just try to finish it up 2 days. So we knew we had to do about 60 miles, you know, break it up in half. And so we're heading down Route 1. We get to Connor Plantation, which I don't know that I'd ever been there. If I had, I didn't remember it. And I told Alan, I said, look, we're going to camp out tonight. We had our sleeping bags and so on. And I said, let's look for a school or a nice big backyard with a lawn, you know. We'll ask the people if we could just camp out in the backyard for the night, and we'll be going early in the morning. So we get to this place. I see this picnic table cover and nice grassy area. And I said, Alan, there's our spot. I said, let's go there. So as we were slowing down to turn into the driveway, there's a car that pulls in right alongside us. The lady in the driver's seat, she rolls her car down, and I says, you live here? She says, no, this is a daycare. I'm picking up my son or daughter. And I said, well, what's the people's name? Because, you know, we wanted to know their name so we could go ask them if we could camp out in the backyard. And they said, well, Misha. and the wheels started turning, and I said, "Is that Leonid?" And she said, "Yeah, it's Leonid." Well, come to find out, Leonid worked at Dead River Company for a number of years, and so did I, as you heard earlier. And we knew each other, and we knew of each other, and we had met each other several times. Leonid is also my sister-in-law's brother. Gil and Colette Karen, this is Colette's brother. So when I found out that it was Leonid, we just went right up to the door, and I reacquainted myself with Leonid, and he said, "Of course you can stay, in the backyard." He had lights around this picnic table enclosure, and he turned the lights on for us, and he gave us water, and so whatever you boys need, you're welcome to have, whatever you need. And next morning we went down and had coffee with he and his wife. They were running a daycare, a bunch of little kids running around everywhere. It was just so vintage hospitality, Aroostook County hospitality. It felt great to be there. And that's Alan's little tent, and I was sleeping in a hammock. It's a camping hammock. It's got a fly over it. But that's where I slept, and got a little bit of sleep that night, and we had another 60 miles to go. So Alan, take us home.
Well, I would have slept in a hammock, but I could never get in or get out of one. It's too far down. You can barely see the towers, Mars Hill.
Is that broccoli? Broccoli farm?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So, the heart of the St. John Valley appears. And these photos meant a lot, or the stops that we made meant a lot to me, because many of us have been by these places. But when you think that you by then have traveled 500 plus miles, these places become really extra special because they've always been important. So I decided to take a few photos of some of these icons that we have. And Norm made friends with the world of equestrian nature.
Me and the four-leggeds, we get along.
They get along pretty well. This was a stop that I absolutely had to make at the Madawaska Tasty Free so that I could have one of their ice creams. That was kind of the focal point of, okay, now let's get on the rest of this trip and make it from Madawaska to Fort Kent in record time. And we'll get into that a little bit. So, there are a few takeaways. We've heard many of them. Maine offers such diversity and beauty, particularly when you experience it at 10 miles per hour. Put your car and drive, do the distance, and know what you're doing. It's really special. People are, for the most part, friendly, helpful, courteous. However, there are exceptions. I won't get into details, but I will say that the stretch between Madawaska and Fort Kent, for me, was the most treacherous. It was the most dangerous. It was extremely dangerous. Road conditions, young drivers with black diesel pickup trucks the size of a Greyhound bus, stopping on the gas just in line with me so that I could inhale all that black fuel, laughing as they were doing it. So it's certainly, it was wonderful, it was great, but it happens. And sadly, it happened to me between Madawaska and Fort Kent. Pedaling the open road is a great way to unplug from the day-to-day, but cell phones have that disconcerting way of bringing you back to reality. We had to have our cell phones. We had to maintain communications with people. But every once in a while, there was a call. Either I would get, Norm would get. Norm has a couple of businesses still going here, and you have to deal with, landlord-tenant issues and stuff. That doesn't go away. You still have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. But that was fine. We turned our cell phones into music boxes in a few days. They were listening to tunes. So that was nice. We didn't really rely on a cell phone other than that. And camping is wholesome, adventurous, and inexpensive, but at this stage in our lives, we want food, a hot shower, and a roof over our heads is difficult to pass on. So of the 11 nights,
Yeah.
I think we camped out 3. 2?
Yeah, we camped out too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Remember the time we met the guy on the other side of the campsite? He kept talking to us?
Yeah, yeah.
That was whatever.
Well, maybe it was 3, but it was more than that.
Yeah. So at this stage, that was nice. Hotel room, or friends and friends. It was really Norm?
Well, here we are at the back to the Route 1. Either the beginning or the end. For us, it was the end. For a lot of people, it's the beginning. But it was totally unexpected for us to ride into town under so much sort of anticipation and fanfare. My wife, I think, spread the word that we were coming into town at this particular time, and our buddy Wrongway came up with a couple bottles of champagne and invited the Fiddlehead Focus people over it. And so we had quite a welcoming party when we came into town. It was very heartwarming. It was very appreciated, and we were glad to be home.
Absolutely. Home we were. Well, as I said earlier, those little cards, hopefully you've come up with some questions or concerns about what you heard tonight, but we'd love to hear from you. We've done all the talking. What things would you like to know about?
What was the day of your arrival here, back home?
The day of the arrival, it was 12 days after September 6th, so that would be 17?
Okay. 18.
18, I think so.
I noticed you wore your vest some of the time, I gather, not all the time.
Right. Yep. We sort of made it a habit for a while, and then we kind of forgot about it. One thing we did do is we had our headlamps and our tail lamps working at all times. And that was, for me at least, an assurance that whoever was coming from behind or ahead knew that there were 2 crazy old farts on the road, and to watch out for them, because they're liable to turn on you. But those lights really were the difference for me. And I think those vests would have been more helpful had we been riding at night, which we didn't do. But
Yeah. But I think we always had something bright colored.
yeah. Sure.
What were your meals like? Were you on a regiment where you had a certain meal that you would want to do, like breakfast, or you want to stop for supper for the restaurant, or?
Norm and I debated that at the start during the planning stages. Do we bring our cooked stuff? Do we cook along the way? Do we this? Do we that? And we sort of decided that we'd be best to try to take our lunch, eat at different places as we were likely to on. And it just so happened that the time of the day was convenient for places to eat at, so that wasn't a problem. One thing I didn't point out is you'll notice that our bags were pretty laden with stuff.
I noticed yours was. I didn't see much on
Yeah,
yours.
well, I was carrying half of it. But does anybody have sleep apnea?
What?
Sleep apnea? Okay. You know, the machine you got to plug into every night. Well, I have sleep apnea, and it's pretty serious. So I had to make room on that bike for a CPAP machine. So I carried my CPAP machine, I carried the hose, and I carried the mouthpiece, and I carried all of that. But then I also, knowing that there were going to be nights where I couldn't plug in, I'd have to bring a source of power. So I brought battery, lithium-ion battery, which, by the way, weighed 4.5 pounds by itself. So I had probably close to 6 pounds worth of CPAP junk on my bike. And that took up almost an entire bag of the photos that you saw. So if people are saying to themselves, well, you know, I have sleep apnea, or I have this, or I have that, there are ways around this. You can find ways to deal with these day-to-day challenges in some innovative ways. So Louise allowed me to buy a travel CPAP machine, which was quite small and worked pretty well. So.
I guess I control the budget.
It was actually less than a bicycle though.
I love it.
It was, it cost less than a bicycle.
Yeah, we had a question here.
Yeah, were there a lot of fumes from the passing vehicles? I know you were in the country a lot of the time, but when you were on Route 1 is the easily traveled road. So did you find bike routes at all, or?
We stuck to Route 1 just about 100% of the time. I'd say 98% we were on Route 1. And no, that wasn't an issue. I mean, it's so open, and it was never, you know, this was mid-September, so I mean, it was never bumper to bumper. So we never had an issue with that.
One observation I wanted to share though is we all tend to think that the bigger the vehicle, the more dangerous it is when you're biking. That wasn't at all the case for us. The loggers went out of their way to make sure that there were clearings. The oil delivery trucks, far out of the way. You name it, your big vehicles took great care making sure that we were nowhere near. And I think part of the reason is because, as some of you know, a big truck will go by, it creates that draft. There have been many accidents that will draw you into their lane of traffic. But anyway, delivery trucks, logging trucks, all of the big guys, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. I think what happened in our case, where there were a few dangerous moments, had more to do with either young kids, but people who really hadn't been around a bicycle that much, and so they drive their car. They're going from A to B. They don't care who's around. And we had to understand that. And we, for the most part. But that's really all. So yes, kudos to the truckers and the top shelf.
Well, I think Aroostook County is probably behind the state in the law that requires a wider bicycle lane, because you see our roads up here, some of them are repaved, but they're no wider.
There's no shoulder.
And that I guess is, I don't know how you fight that budget.
You'll see, if you go by Alvin Bouchard's house, you start going up the road, on the right-hand side, there's a sign, DOT sign.
3 feet
Okay.
from a bicycle.
Get on a bicycle, measure out 3 feet. Tell me that an SUV, a Suburban, driving by 50 miles an hour, within just 3 feet from you, Mister, that's scary. If there's any policy change that could be made, is one, pay close attention to road reconstruction and adding and improving shoulders, because shoulders are desperately in need of repair. And secondly, that 3 foot, that should be at least 5, if not 6 feet.
Okay.
And I think if they did that, they'd have more people riding bicycles.
Yeah, it's not bicycle friendly until they do those kind of things. But in Fort Kent, we have bicycle racks in town, which I think is rare, which is nice. We have people, I think there was, not long ago, was it last year or the year before, they started encouraging school children on a certain day of the year where we bike or we walk to school. That's nice. We should continue to do that.
Are you planning another trip, you guys?
We're talking about it,
Okay,
but I would say we're not in the planning stages yet.
let us know.
We're just in the talking about it stage. Yeah. But thank you very much for your attention tonight.